I had a really wonderful and uneventful first pregnancy, except for the fact that I also have kidney disease, and somehow there was really not a lot of overlap in doctors who can both understand kidney disease and understand pregnancy. So a lot of doctors sort of treated me like I was this weird ticking time bomb instead of just a pregnant woman. I had a doctor break up with me over the phone. I really loved her. She was my first OB. I thought she was amazing. And she called me and was just like, yeah, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And we need to see other people. And in your case, you're going to see this maternal fetal medicine practice. And good luck. So I was like, okay, great. Thank you. So I did see them. And then I eventually found a doctor. We had moved here who was a lot better. And I liked her a lot more. But there was sort of this theme where the doctors didn't trust that my body could actually just make this pregnancy work and make it work right. So I spent a lot of time convincing or trying to convince doctors that I felt like my body was doing the right thing, and every single test came back perfect. And it was really if I hadn't had that specter hanging over me, it would have just been the perfect pregnancy, at least physically. But still, even the doctor I had found who was a decent match, finally was like, we need to induce you 2 days before your due date. And I don't know why those 2 days were so important, but I was so tired of fighting. So I was just like, sure, sounds good. So 2 days before my first son was due, it was August 1st, I show up at Newton Wellesley, where at the time, I don't know if they still do this, and I really hope they don't, the practice was to have you show up the day before for what's called a cervical ripening. And then they send you home so you can, I don't know what I was actually supposed to do at home, maybe get a good night's sleep, and then come back the next day and get some Pitocin and get the baby out. So when this happened, it was, 2 days before, and my body wasn't ready. It was like when you go to the grocery store and you pick up that avocado and you know that it's just you can't cut it open, nothing's gonna happen. I was that avocado. So they were like, sure, let's ripen you up. And I spend the day there, watch a lot of TV, nothing really happens. And they apply some internal medication, try to ripen things along, nothing's happening. So they're like, okay, you're good. You should go home. But cramps had started to happen. And they were very unpleasant. And I'm not a wimpy person with pain. And I was like, I don't really like these. And the nurse was like, yeah, no, you're on a machine and you look good. These contractions are super irregular. They had to just be cramps. And I was like, that sounds terrible, but okay, sure, I'll go home. And so we're driving from Newton Wellesley to Somerville. We had just moved here. We had no idea that traffic just everybody goes insane and you can't drive anywhere within a reasonable time. So we were in the car for a good 2 hours, during which time we saw Red Sox fans and potholes, and I'm getting progressively more cranky and I'm in a lot more pain. But everything is so irregular. We have this little app and we're timing it and nothing's regular. So I'm like, obviously I'm not in labor. So a lot of friends who'd been induced were like, you just have to eat before you go in because labor's gonna take a super long time and you're not gonna have any food. So you gotta eat. So I was like, definitely. So I get this catering size tray of baked ziti and I sit down to eat it by myself because that is my favorite food and nothing was gonna stop me. And I'm in pain and I can't focus. So I'm like, let's watch The Daily Show. That sounds great. Take my mind off some stuff. And my husband hates The Daily Show, so it was a good excuse to just be like, I'm in pain and I get to choose. So this is great. And I'm watching The Daily Show. I'm eating this catering tray of baked ziti alone. And Wyatt Snack comes on and starts talking for some reason about egg salad sandwiches. And that's all I can remember. And that's when I just barfed everywhere because I was like, this is horrible. And then it was like The Exorcist and I was expelling a demon, but the demon was my son and the ziti had to go somewhere else. So I go into the bathroom and I get cleaned up and I'm just like, I just feel gross. And it was 1,000 degrees in my apartment. And so I go and I decide that I'm gonna lay down on the couch and tell my husband that I'm done and I'm not having the baby anymore and they were gonna have to figure out something else. And I turned my face into the couch cushions and just laid there while my poor husband was like, I think you actually do have to have the baby, so you should get up. So, and then looking back, obviously, snippets of birth class come back to me and I remember oh, that's obviously the transitional phase into active labor where in birth class they were like, women may say they no longer want to have this child. But I didn't remember that because all I could remember is that I really wanted ziti. So I go into the bathroom, get cleaned up, and while I'm in there, I'm like, oh, I just feel like I have to pee. So I sit on the toilet, and I don't have to pee because my water breaks. So finally we call the doctor, and we had actually been on the phone with the doctor the whole time, who kept telling me that I wasn't in labor and that my contractions were too irregular, and also that I could still talk, which was odd. Even in, like, at the time, I was like, what does that have to do with anything? But I was still talking, so clearly I wasn't in labor. And they're like, if you go to the hospital now, they'll just send you home. So I was like, okay. So then my water breaks, and like I also feel like I have to push like all at once. It was like nothing happened, and then everything happened. So just like that avocado, like I was ripe, and like we were gonna miss it. Like we were just gonna become like this rotten avocado in like 30 seconds. So that that happens. And so the water breaks, I feel like I have to push. And my husband's on the phone with the doctor, and they're like, yeah, you should probably go to the hospital. I'm like, yeah. So we don't know how we're gonna get to Newton Wellesley. There's a Red Sox game, and all I can think about, I'm like, my car has cloth upholstery, and it's August. And I can't afford to buy a new car. I cannot give birth in this car. So I'm like, you need to call 911 and have someone else take me to the hospital. And so what I didn't realize is that when you call 911, it's not just an ambulance that shows up. Every single emergency vehicle will show up. And we lived on this tiny one-way street, which suddenly filled with a fire engine, some ambulances, and some police cars. And the firemen are the first to arrive. And I'm still on the toilet, and I'm not wearing pants, because why would I? And these two firemen come up the stairs, and it's literally like 1,000 degrees, and they're just like, wow, it's really hot in here. And then they just take a look at me, and they're like, hey, so what do you want to do? And I was like, wow, I was really hoping that you guys had a plan, because like this is not, like clearly we are not two people capable of making plans. So they didn't have a plan, and they just kind of looked at each other, looked at me, and then the police showed up, and they were equally unhelpful. And then there was like 4 men, my husband, a couple of cats, and like 1,000 degrees, and I still don't know what I'm gonna do because everyone's just looking at me, and I'm just like, oh my God. And so finally, the ambulance shows up, and this EMT walks up the stairs, and God bless her, she had had children, and she saw what was happening, and she was like, girl, get up and get off the toilet. We're going to the hospital. And I was like, no, I'm just gonna stay here. I like it here. I know what's happening. I wanna stay here. And she just like tough loved me right off that toilet. And she's like, walk down the stairs. So I walk down the stairs, and I'm like, please, no more water break. Like, there's other tenants. What if they fall in it? And so I'm like walking down the stairs, and I get outside. Every single neighbor is outside because they don't know what's happening, and there's all these emergency vehicles, and people see me come out, and they just start applauding, and they're like, yay! And this woman is like holding up a baby, and she's like making the baby applaud at me. So, and then I like get in the ambulance, and my water like finishes breaking, and I'm like, oh, no one saw that, thank God. And then I was like, so where are we going? I don't even know where we're going. And they take me to Cambridge Hospital, which like I can't recommend them enough for all of your emergency surprise labor needs. And they like, we get in, we do some triage, and the woman, the nurse there, who's amazing, she's like, you know, ask me name, medications, whatever. And then she's like, so do you have a birth plan? And I was like, yeah, no, clearly not. And so then I sort of like reluctantly keep going through this labor, and I'm like kind of tired and angry, but I still am like, okay, we're gonna have this baby. And I start to calm down because it's been a pretty traumatic experience. And I look out the window, and there's just this beautiful sunset like coming over Cambridge, and I start to just relax. And finally, I give birth to my son, and I just like do this final push, and he's amazing and totally healthy and looks just like my dad, which was so creepy and weird, but so beautiful. But I was like, holy shit, you're my dad. And you know, it was just really the best emergency crazy experience I could have hoped for. And then the doctor comes over in the end. He kind of, you know, came out from nowhere because no one was expecting me, and he looks at me, and he doesn't say congratulations. He just says, wow, you have one hell of a cocktail party story. And that's my story. Thank you.